You are listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 319.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. How's everybody doing today? Hope you're all doing well, and I am excited to be here in the middle of October with a discussion about cookies and baking for the fall. So today on the podcast, I have an interview with Ryan Alvarez and Adam Merrin. Ryan and Adam have been cooking together in a small kitchen in a house on a hill in Eagle Rock, California. In 2015, they started their blog, Husbands That Cook. They wrote their first self-titled debut cookbook, Husbands That Cook, in March of 2019. And today we're here to talk about their newest book, That Takes the Cookie, which will be published next month on November the 12th. So whether you're looking for something sweet, salty, chocolatey, fruity, crispy, chewy, or classic, this colorful book includes the perfect mixture of treats for every craving with 85 brand new cookie recipes, from timeless classics to imaginative creations. Ryan and Adam and I talk about what makes their cookie book different. We dive into each chapter in the book, and they share their processes for testing, writing, and photographing the recipes. They also share tips for cookie bakers, including cookies for this season of fall, as well as a brilliant idea for making endless vanilla extract. So without further delay, let's dive into this interview with Ryan and Adam. Hi, Ryan and Adam. Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast.
Hello.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here. Love the topic we're going to talk about today. But before we dive in, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, well, my name is Ryan Alvarez.
And I'm Adam Merrin.
And together we are Husbands That Cook. So we are husbands. We have been married since 2006. We've been together since 2001. And we also cook.
Yes.
We started our cooking blog, Husbands That Cook, back in 2015. We started posting recipes there, and
we didn't always like to cook. I'll just jump in. I'm Adam Merrin,
Yeah.
and I'm Ryan's husband. The first half of our relationship, Ryan did all the cooking.
Yeah.
I didn't really enjoy it very much. I didn't love the cleanup. I'm very a clean and organized person. So anything that got messy or a little out of control in the kitchen, it just was too much for me to handle. So he did all the cooking. I did a lot of the eating. But at the same time, I always had a really good palate, and I had notes on some of the things that he would make. And so we would tweak the recipes. I would say like maybe a little more salt here, or maybe we could add a little crunch here. And so I would help in creating these recipes. And in the kitchen, I would just kind of,
Yeah, he was more the spectator, but tasting it and improving it. And then at some point, he became so into it that we just started cooking together. We started like switching off cooking dinner for each other or cooking at the same time. And eventually we had this.
This is all before the blog.
Yeah, this is before the blog. And this, we developed so many recipes just for ourselves that we had this binder full of printouts with notes all over them. And it was just for us and like for our friends when we'd have them over for dinner. And at some point in late 2014, I was like, we have this whole folder. We should share these things with the world. Share these recipes. And so I thought about it a lot, said to him, I think I want to start a cooking blog.
And when he said that to me, I said, well, if you're going to start a cooking blog, I want to do it with you, because this is the time where we had been cooking together. And like he said, I'd make him a dinner, he'd make me a dinner. And so we'd been doing this for like a year or two and had these recipes. So I said, yeah, I want to do it with you.
Yeah. So we took it really seriously. Neither of us had ever been in a professional kitchen by any means or done any food photography. but we just picked up a camera, learned how to do it, and then launched our website, husbandsthatcook.com.
Ryan was always a very good cook. He
Yeah.
cooked with his mom and his grandma and learned a lot from them, and even
Yes.
took a cooking class when he was a little kid.
Yeah, I mean,
he's always been really into it, and he's the one that brings the cupcakes to birthday parties and makes cakes for his friends on their birthday.
I've always loved it. I've always loved it. But yeah, no professional training, but just home cooks, and we just started sharing these recipes, and people really started responding to it.
You all are appealing to the more documenting, note-taking side of me, and I think I want to ask a little bit about that process for the people who are just like hearing this and thinking, oh, I can do that kind of thing too. And you had a notebook. Was this all done by hand, like the notes that you took and the way that you like wrote down what you did?
Yes, we would print out recipes online, and then with pen, like while we're in the kitchen, making notes, scribbling things out, writing things on the side, more salt, less salt. All the pages are stained. They have little oil droplets and stuff all over them. But yeah, we would just make detailed notes because we want it to be good every time. Even just for ourselves, even before the blog, we want it to be the same and good every single time.
Right.
So that's why we did it.
We like consistency. I think that's where we sort of got into liking things measured, because we wanted to have it the same, if not better, each time. It was frustrating to me where we'd make a meal and it would come out not as good the next time. And so we wanted to make sure that each time it was exactly the same. So that's when we started writing out exact measurements. And and
I'll just say briefly, this is part of our informal home training. My mother is an excellent cook, and she's very good at following recipes and tweaking recipes and measuring everything so it's the same every time. My grandmother, my dad's mom, was also an amazing cook, but she never measured a thing in her entire life. And sometimes her stuff was amazing and sometimes it wasn't quite as good because it wasn't measured. And so I think, I don't know, I liked having both of those perspectives, because now I can kind of see there's a time and a place for just feeling things out and throwing stuff in a pot.
And we do that too.
But especially when you're writing a recipe
and sharing it with the
public, you have to have that precision and that consistency.
Yeah, the sad thing historically, though, about the non-measuring camp is we don't have, when they're gone, when these people are gone from our life, we don't have anything unless we've really taken time to write it down. My grandmother, when she got older and she was losing some of her energy and not feeling so well, she took time to write things down. So we have a lot of her handwritten recipes. But my mom, we don't have anything. Nope.
Yeah, that's great that you have that.
And I don't know. This is an interesting question to ask, like your grandmother, how many people was she feeding versus how many was your mother feeding? I think with my mom, there were 10 of us, and my grandmother, there was only like 4. Maybe it's a difference in the number of other things they have going on. I don't know.
That's a really interesting point. And I think that's part of it. And also my grandmother was born in Argentina and lived her adult life in Cuba. So, you kind of had to make do with what you had. So fortunately, before she passed, we, over a couple years, I would watch her cook stuff and just kind of write down what she was doing. Like, oh, it looks like she just added about half a teaspoon of this, half a cup of that. So a lot of the stuff we have. And actually in our first book, Husbands That Cook, that came out in 2019, there are several recipes in there that are hers.
Nice.
There's some Spanish and Cuban recipes in there that are from
yuca
her.
con mojo.
Yeah, yuca con mojo. There's a flan recipe that's hers. So I'm really glad that we were able to keep those alive, because like you said, without that, you're going to lose them.
Yeah, you do. You do a lot. So let's talk about your first book then. Husbands That Cook came out in 2019. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so it was so much different than this new book, which we'll tell you about in a little bit. But the first book was all about us and stories about a relationship. And so each recipe had a story, and it brought it back to something that, some sort of memory with our relationship, a family story. Like we said, there's a lot of recipes from his grandmother, from my grandmother. So it's a lot of family shared recipes. And so this one the new one is all about cookies, which we'll talk about later. But
yeah, this first one is all about us, all about our favorite recipes. We took all the photos. We did all the writing, and it's just very meaningful to us because these are our family recipes, a lot of them. And it's a very special book, and I'm so glad that we did it. It is all vegetarian, I will say that.
Oh, nice.
At the time when we wrote it, we were both vegetarian. It's not vegan, but it is vegetarian. But I feel like it's also a great resource for people that want to have some more vegetarian recipes.
Yeah, and it's a mix of desserts and breakfasts and entrees and sides,
cocktails.
And, yeah, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And how long had you had your blog prior to writing the cookbook?
3 years from when we started it. We launched the blog in 2015. The book came out in 2019, but
we started writing it pretty close after we started the blog.
I think we wrote the proposal in like late 2016.
Yeah. Did you all pitch the proposal to a publisher?
We did.
Or did you have an agent?
So we were nominated for a Saveur blog award. In 2016 for best how-to blog, because we did a lot of step-by-step photos and a lot of process help for people. So we were nominated for best how-to blog. And because of that, we actually had an agent reach out to us and says, have you ever thought of writing a cookbook? And we said, well, at the time, no, we hadn't really thought about that. But she said, you should do it. So we threw together a proposal, pitched it to a couple publishers, and we found one that did it, and we were just thrilled with it. We're so happy with the book.
How quickly everything came together from the time that Ryan said, hey, I want to start a cooking blog, to then us launching the blog and then writing a book like within a year.
It happened very quickly.
I guess, we put our all into everything we do, whether it's the book or the blog. And I feel like, people just kind of saw that and responded to that. I mean, we really did take our times and made sure that the recipes were
perfect
and that they work.
Yes.
When people make them. And
doing photography for process shots is no joke.
Yes. Yeah. So we didn't do that for the book, obviously, because you can't have 10,000 photos.
That it had, right?
Yes. Yeah. That was our thing. We love to do those process shots, showing people. I mean, sometimes they're just beautiful, right? Like pouring a melted chocolate batter into a pan. It looks great. But it's also very helpful for people, because if you're trying to stir something to a certain, you want all the white streaks to be gone, or you cook it until it's brown, whatever the thing is, you can show people, and that helps.
Yeah, very good. And now you took like a really different approach with this book that we're talking about today. Tell us a little bit about the book. It's not out yet, but I believe that it's something people can still pre-order and get ready for its release. So tell us all about it.
Yes. So it's called That Takes the Cookie. More than 85 tasty treats for every occasion. It comes out November 12th. You can pre-order it right now at all your favorite online retailers. It is 85 cookie recipes arranged into different chapters, different themes. And this one was a little different because it's not quite as personal. These aren't necessarily family recipes and treasured heirlooms that we've held on to for all these years, but they're all brand new and they're all so good. And I'm so excited for people to try them because we had so much fun testing these.
Yeah, and the way this one came about too is that our agent reached out to us in December of 2022, and she was talking to a publisher that was looking for authors to write a Christmas cookie book.
Yes,
and so she asked us. She said, "Hey, would you be interested in writing a book about holiday cookies?" And we said yes. And she said, "Okay, well, we need you to write a proposal." So we wrote a really nice proposal. I think they wanted 5 sample recipes and maybe 20 other ideas.
20 recipe titles.
Yeah, and we gave them like 100 ideas. And I think that they liked the ideas so much that they said, like, "Oh, we shouldn't let's turn this into an everyday book."
Not just Christmas, not just holidays.
Exactly. So it went from a holiday book to now a book that cookies that you can make all year round. So it was kind of interesting how that came about.
Yes, because originally we were just coming up with all these holiday recipes, and a couple of the recipes are in the book that are still from that original proposal. Like there's one called "Have Yourself a Merry Little Cookie" that's in there that is still from that original Christmas proposal or holiday proposal. Now it's just all year round cookies every day if you want.
So what was it like writing a cookie book? The process, the testing, like, do you eat all the cookies? What about all the things that you experienced while writing this book?
the very beginning, we were eating the cookies.
We were.
And we both noticed that we gained
We were gaining weight even within the first couple of weeks.
So after that, we started tasting and then just taking like a little bite and then spitting it out, actually.
Yeah. Just taking a little bite, making sure that it tastes good, that the texture's there, that the flavor's there.
Because we make like 5 or 6 recipes a day. So you have to taste 5 or 6 different cookies and a couple different times.
Yeah, sometimes you have to do each recipe more than once. So yeah, there's a lot of cookies. If they were good enough, like presentable enough, we would share them with people.
Yeah.
Neighbors, I sing in a choir, so I'd bring it big trays to choir rehearsal. Of course, I was very popular. But if they weren't good enough, if it was an early batch, you're like, ooh, this is not good, and then it just goes straight in the trash because we're not going to give out bad cookies. We have a reputation to uphold, after all.
No, that's right. If you showed up with a tray of really good cookies to choir practice, I'm sure you were the most popular person in the choir.
Yes, yeah. But in terms of testing too, like, some of the recipes we test just once or twice and they were fine. Some we had to test 3, 4, or 5. I think the record was like 6 times.
Yeah.
For one of the cookies.
How long did the whole thing take? Like 6 months or so?
Yeah, the actual testing was about 6 months, 5 or 6 months.
Yeah. And how many days a week were you baking?
Almost every day.
Pretty much every day.
Yeah.
A lot of trips to the store. We were talking about this. We should have measured how much butter we used, how much flour, how much sugar. I mean, I can't even imagine so much.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about ingredients? Like what's the most important ingredients that people should think about if they want to make really good cookies?
Yes. Well, I just want to say, like, for this book, we wanted to use ingredients that everybody can get. So, like, we would use just like a normal flour, regular salt.
Yeah, we don't call for a lot of specialty ingredients, especially like you said, like flour, sugar, salt, all the basics. A couple of the cookies have some more unusual ingredients, but we'll always tell people where to find them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say the most important thing is honestly, one of them is butter. You have to have a good flavorful butter. I don't think you need to get the fancy, over expensive, gourmet butters, but just like your standard butter, as long as it's unsalted, for the most consistent results. That's what I would recommend. And also flour is important too. You see a lot of people say what their favorite brand is. I don't really think it matters, as long as you're using something that's fresh.
Yeah. So did you weigh your flour, or were you a scooping level, or
I was just going to say, we're big fans of digital scales for a number of reasons. Like, one thing is you can put a bowl on top of the scale and you can measure all your dry ingredients into the digital scale, and you don't have to
you don't have to use as many measuring cups. A couple of things. So we love using the scale, so we do provide grams for every ingredient like that. However, we also provide cups and teaspoons, and we do both because I know some people maybe don't have a scale or aren't as comfortable with it. So we do both, but we both highly recommend for baking is using a scale. They're so cheap. You can get them just online or at any store.
And it's just the most consistent results because, like you said, you could scoop, you can use a spoon, but if you just use a scale, then it's just always the same.
It's always the same every single time.
I 100% agree. And I don't bake a ton, but when I do, I always use the scale. And you're right, the little digital scale, even the little like number part, like pulls out a little bit so you can see it on the other side of the bowl. It's great. And my husband happens to brew beer, and he's the one that uses it the most. I mean, he's like always in there, like he's an engineer, he's like measuring things and writing things down. He always has that scale out. So I think it's a great thing to have in the kitchen. And I'll link to a simple digital scale in the show notes because we're heading into baking time. I mean, this is the time of year. Of course, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it's getting to be fall. Of course, there's fall holidays, the Christmas holidays, the winter holidays. People are thinking about baking. And I thought it would be fun if we took a little tour through some of the chapters in the book, talked about some of the cookie recipes and things that are in there. But before we do, I wanted to back up 1 minute.
Sure.
For ingredients, you have a method for making what you call endless vanilla extract. And I think this is a great tip. I would love it if you shared it with my audience because it is something that I hadn't thought about quite in the way that you described it because of the endless part.
Yes. So full disclosure, this idea came from our friend Rebecca Firth, who runs a blog called Displaced Housewife. She's an author. She's also written a book about cookies, a book about cakes. She's one of our closest friends. And this idea came from her, but it's an idea that everybody should know about. So basically, vanilla extract is expensive, as we all know. But you can buy vanilla beans in bulk online for much cheaper. You don't need a lot, let's say 5 to 10 beans. And what you do is you slit them in half, drop them into like a 16-ounce bottle with a lid, fill the bottle with either vodka or bourbon. We use bourbon, has a little more flavor.
Yeah.
And then you shake it up and let it sit in a dark place for about 6 months to a year. So you have to be patient. The first time you have to be patient. It takes a while. But once you have that, you have delicious vanilla extract. And then every time you use it in baking, say you use a tablespoon or a teaspoon, whatever, you pour a little bit out, top the bottle back off with a little more bourbon or vodka, close it up, give it a shake, and put it back in the cabinet.
And you could always put extra beans in there. You're cooking with vanilla throughout the year.
Exactly. We have a vanilla bean cookie in the book, and we say, once you're done with that pod, even though you've scraped out all the seeds, there's still a lot of flavor in there.
Yeah.
Drop it in that same bottle, and then it'll keep going.
And you have a 16-ounce bottle forever.
Forever. You just keep topping it up.
An amazing. So thank you to Rebecca, and then thank you for sharing that tip with your audience and now with mine. And I think that sometimes people that write cookbooks, they're afraid to share other people's work. But if people give credit and they say, I got this from Rebecca, she thought of this great idea. It just shares the wealth. Yeah. And people, I think little tips like this are what make cookbooks so fun to use. And it's just, I just love being in the kitchen and learning all these new things. So that's a great tip. And since we're going to be heading into holiday baking, everybody needs to probably, I don't know if we have enough time though. It's August, September, October, November. You might not have it until the spring.
Maybe not. But it also makes a good gift. Make 2 bottles and save one and then give somebody as a gift.
That's a great idea.
It's a very
the last tip I'll give too about baking, if people are doing holiday baking, is an oven thermometer. That is maybe the other piece of equipment that I would recommend besides the scale.
Because everybody's oven is so different.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Even fancy ovens, high-end, expensive brands, guarantee you your oven is probably not the temperature that it says that it is.
Yeah, I agree about
that.
So
I recommend that.
Yeah, an oven thermometer is always a good thing to have. And I vote for the bourbon too, being native Kentuckian, living in Kentucky. I think that you should use bourbon over vodka.
I think so
more
too.
flavor.
More flavor.
So many different ways you could use it. So that's really fun. Okay, so let's talk about the chapters. The first one is called the Fab Five. All right, tell us about the Fab Five.
So the Fab Five is kind of inspired by the Fab Four, the Beatles.
Yes, the original Fab Four.
And even in the introduction of the chapter, there's kind of a parody of Ed Sullivan's introduction of the Beatles' first performance on the show. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, so that one is just 5 sort of your basic classic foundational cookies. So chocolate chip, vanilla bean sugar cookie, gingerbread, shortbread, and oatmeal raisin.
And not just chocolate chip, the perfect chocolate chip cookie. That's what it's called.
What makes yours so special?
People need to get the book and find out.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we have a couple little different techniques and
I will.
I've seen
the recipe, and there is something different in it that you don't see a lot of recipes. So they're not just baiting you for get the book and find out. It's really true.
Well, I'll say just one small piece of it is we use a little bit of almond butter, just a little, because there's a debate in chocolate chip cookies about nuts versus no nuts. Some people love them, some people don't. With the almond butter, you just get a hint of the nuttiness, but without the nut texture. So if you're not a person who likes nuts in your chocolate chip cookies, this is for you because you still get the flavor without that texture.
Yeah, and that's excellent. And probably it adds, peanut butter in cookies can kind of act as a flour too, because it's really the ground up nuts and some oil. So I would suspect that the almond butter, I don't know, it might be a little bit, but still add a little bit of body to the cookie in addition to the
definitely
flavor.
Some chew. Yeah,
some nice texture.
Yeah, of course, I was wanting to dive right into the shortbread cookie recipe. I've watched Ted Lasso several times, and I'm always fascinated with the shortbread cookies that he takes to Rebecca Welton. Every day, he's taking her cookies.
I mean, a good shortbread
cookies, right?
They're so good. When they're good, they're delicious.
They're really good. When they're good, they're really good. Okay, next chapter is called Classics with a Twist.
Yeah, so that one we took sort of your classic cookies, but then give them like a little flavor twist.
Yeah, like instead of a gingerbread cookie, we have gingerbread crinkles.
Yeah.
So it has that textured top and the little powdered sugar on the top. What else do we have in here?
So we have wedding cookies, but we infuse them with chai, like masala chai spices. So they're chai spice wedding cookies.
Oh, with thumbprints. We have pumpkin pie thumbprints.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
good. I thought
Perfect for
those
the
would be
fall.
good for the fall. Tell us a little bit more about that particular recipe, pumpkin pie thumbprints.
Yeah, so every Thanksgiving, I'm the one that makes the pumpkin pie, and
It's really good pumpkin pie.
And so it's just everyone always loves it, and so I just took that filling and used it for the top of these cookies. And
Yeah.
so we took our favorite thumbprint and then used that pie filling on top, and it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like all the flavors of
Tastes
pumpkin
like
pie.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yep. The next chapter, frosted and filled.
Yes.
Yeah. So that one kind of speaks for itself. These are cookies that either have a frosting on top or a filling inside. So we have some Linzer cookies. We have some
Gingerbread whoopie pies with vanilla marshmallow cream.
Yeah, we even have an ice cream sandwich cookie. We have a peppermint mocha ice cream sandwiches.
Soft and chewy carrot cake cookies.
Brown butter pecan cookies with salted caramel filling. The list goes on.
And when people think about making a frosted or filled cookie, what's the best process that you have found for the part where you actually fill them, like preparing the frosting and filling them? Can that be done in the same day?
It definitely can. The nice thing about cookies is that they cool so quickly. Because obviously the main thing is when you're frosting or filling any baked good, like a cake or a cookie, it has to be completely cool. If it's warm at all, the filling's going to melt and it's going to be a disaster. But cookies cool so quickly. Even a large cookie will cool on a rack in 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make your cookies, and then while they're cooling, usually make the frosting or filling, and then you can put it together once everything's ready.
Yeah, very good. Cute and colorful, chapter 4.
Yeah, so that has the Have Yourself a Merry Little Cookie,
Yes.
which we got to include. We have some fun slice and bake raspberry spirals.
Yeah.
The chocolate rainbow meltaways. Those are pretty. They look like tie-dyes, but on a cookie.
Yeah, so everything in that chapter is just pretty to look at as well as delicious.
Yeah, like so the chocolate rainbow meltaways, the chocolate cookie underneath is delicious by
Yes.
itself, but then it has a pretty top.
Yeah, and then we have, for Halloween coming up, we have some haunted Halloween haystacks. So everybody loves classic haystack cookies, right? With the little crunchy noodles and maybe some peanuts and chocolate or whatever. They're all very tasty. But we did a couple different colors and flavors, and we did some little candy eyes on top. So they look like little monsters, little furry monsters or something. It's very cute, very easy. That recipe is honestly one of the easiest ones in the book. Perfect for making with kids.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Yeah. The next chapter I thought was really neat because it's possibly introducing people to some cookies that they maybe haven't had before around the world. So I thought it would be interesting if you maybe picked one that you thought was maybe a little more unusual, or one that you think people maybe would really, a lot of bang for your buck, even though you may not know what it is.
I had never heard of this one until we started researching this chapter, but it's a polvorones cookie from the Philippines.
Yes.
And so we do ours with coconut and ube frosting on top, but it's a no-bake cookie. It's really simple. I think there's 6 ingredients. It's like flour, sugar, salt. This one has milk powder, which is really interesting. But the cookie kind of gets pressed into
like a puck,
cookie pucks, and it has the flavor almost like a pie crust. And then it has this delicious purple ube frosting on top. But I was blown away by that cookie because it's a little sweet, it's a little salty, but I love the crumbly texture. It just kind of like dissolves in your mouth. That one I really was impressed with.
Yeah, and it's fun because that chapter in particular, because we were researching all these cookies from around the world, besides the cookies themselves, there's all of those different techniques that people use that have, from these different cultures. So like those polvorones, because they're not baked, but they use flour, to be safe, you actually toast the flour in a skillet so the flour gets nice and nutty, and then you mix it with this milk powder, and like you said, you press it into these pucks. So it's not baked, and it's almost like a crumble texture. It's so delicious.
That's one of my favorites.
But all of those, there was these, different techniques and different flavors. We have cookies from Africa. We have cookies from Asia. We have cookies from the Middle East. Cookies from the Mediterranean, South America. This one was so fun to research because most of these cookies we had never even heard of before, but it was very delicious research.
Yeah, everyone is so good.
Nice. Well, next we take a trip into bar cookies with a bar walks into with a bar walks into a cookie. And
Yeah.
do a little bit of maybe primer on bar cookies, like what people might need to consider if they're heading into bar cookie territory.
Yeah. So, we actually did discuss this a little bit. Are bar cookies cookies? Do they qualify?
On
They're
Wikipedia, it does say that a
they
bar
they
cookie
do
is a
qualify as
cookie.
cookies, and there's some. We have a banana bread bar that really is probably just a cake, but it's held in your hand, and so therefore it is a cookie.
Yeah.
But
It
yeah,
doesn't
no,
fall apart. Like you actually can pick it up and hold
you
it.
can
Yes.
pick it up and
Yes.
hold it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so we have some like brownie type recipes. We have some blondies. We have some cheesecake bars, things like that. Yeah, I mean, I think that the main thing to know with those is to just have a good pan. You don't want to use. Actually, this is just true for baking cookies as well. You never want to use dark coated metal bakeware. It can often cook your stuff too quickly and brown things on the bottom too much. So we either use stainless steel bakeware or glass, especially when cooking bar cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's
And
a good
there's a
tip.
recipe for a fall recipe that was the pumpkin
Spice,
seven
layer bars.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, again, everyone knows, or a lot of people might know 7-layer bars. It's a classic, easy recipe that's a great crowd pleaser at parties. Well, they often use a layer of condensed milk. We added some pumpkin spice. As you can tell, there's a theme. We love pumpkin pie spice. But then we put that in the condensed milk and actually some pumpkin puree as well. And we make that as one of the layers, and it is delish.
Nice. It sounds really good. And then the last chapter, something that I thought was a really unique chapter, also called cookie mashups, because there's going to be some cookies in here that, unlike around the world, where other parts of the world might have heard of it, these are truly unique to this book. And so tell us a little bit about those.
This one was so fun to make because we just kind of took our favorite desserts and transformed them into cookies. So, like, we have a tiramisu cloud cookie. We have banana pudding bites. We have a creme brulee cookie, which actually the tops of the cookies get torched.
Yes.
And has a nice crispy layer. We have cannoli cookie cups.
Little mini cannoli cookies. It's so fun.
Sticky toffee pudding cookies.
Yeah, it's so fun because also in this chapter in particular, but through the whole book, if you bake your way through this book, yes, you're going to learn how to make cookies, but you're also going to learn how to make a lot of other things. So like that creme brulee cookie, you make a pastry cream, essentially. So you make a nice vanilla butter cookie, and then you make on the stove just like a delicious vanilla pastry cream. And then once it's cooled, you frost it on top, and then, yeah, like we said, we brulee it. But yeah, you'll learn how to make pastry cream. You'll learn how to make marshmallows. We make in this book marshmallow fillings, frostings, glazes, caramels. There's all these sort of, yes, it's 85 recipes, but there's all these extra things that you'll learn how to make. Jams, lime curd, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, really.
Huh. And I think the one that stuck out to me was the flourless chocolate cake cookies. I always think it's neat to take something as popular as a flourless chocolate cake and then, turn it into a cookie. And for anybody that's a chocolate lover, I'm sure that one is very, very good.
They're extra chocolatey. They're insane. And it has an interesting process, too. You could tell them.
Yeah, so that one, of course, it's flourless. And, there aren't a lot of gluten-free recipes in the book, but this is one of them. You basically, you almost like make a meringue. It's you whip up the eggs and you have this melted chocolate and the chocolate chips. And then you put the batter on the cookie sheet and you actually let it sit at room temperature for about 30 minutes. And it makes it dries it out, kind of almost like a macaron if you've ever made those. And then when you bake it, that top gets like glossy and shiny and crisp. And it's so good.
Really chewy.
Really chewy and delicious.
So did you say that it took about 6 months to write this book, or was that the other book?
This one took about a year.
Yeah, it was about 6 months of testing.
And the whole process took a little over a year. But the last book was about 2 years.
Yeah, this one was much quicker. So it was about 6 months of testing and then about 3 months of writing.
It's a lot quicker to write and test cookies than it is to do like cakes
and full meals.
Entrees and
much quicker. And then we did not do the photography for this book. There was a photographer in New York named Lauren Volo, who is extraordinarily talented. And we flew to New York and watched the photo shoot happen. And it was such a fun experience to watch somebody else make our recipes and decorate them and then take pictures of them.
And also the nice thing I'll just throw in too is that the ladies that were helping in the kitchen got to test all of our recipes.
Yes.
And so if there was any problems with them, which that thankfully there weren't many, there was just a couple little like small things, but they were able to make everything, and it turned out not only visually, but well, I was going to say not only deliciously, but also visually, they would come out exactly how our instructions were intended.
Yeah,
that was a good feeling, and
yeah, it's a good feeling to know that even when other cooks are making your recipes, that they're turning out exactly how you intended.
Yeah, because that's a really good dry run to be able to do that prior to publication, because sometimes you don't, unless you've had other people try them along the way. But, putting a book out with all these 85 recipes is no joke, because you want people to be successful in the kitchen.
Yes.
That's the whole point of this. And it is really amazing when you can work with a photography team that bakes them also and then photographs them. How long did that process take?
It was incredible that they were able to do this in a week, because it would have taken us a couple months to shoot everything.
Yeah, we're much slower because we're not professional photographers. We enjoy doing it. We've done it successfully, but we're just way slower. And so, they did 85 recipes.
They would do sometimes 12 in a day. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
It was very impressive to watch.
Yeah.
And there was only three women. There was Lauren, and then Mira, and then Megan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 2 women in the kitchen cooking, making all the recipes, making them look beautiful, and then the photographer.
Yeah.
Exactly. But like you said, it's when somebody else makes our recipes successfully, that's the best feeling in the world. I love it, hearing those comments from people. And then conversely, when someone says, I tried your recipe and it didn't work, or it's a disaster, that's the worst. I'm like, okay, what happened? You try to detective work, figure out what happened. But thankfully, that doesn't happen very often.
No.
Yeah, it does happen sometimes, but it shouldn't. If you've gone through your due diligence, which most cookbook authors do, it doesn't happen a lot.
And it usually is based on what's happening in their kitchen, not with the recipe.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about some tips that you believe? We've talked about the oven thermometer. We've talked about good butter.
Scale.
We've talked about a scale. What other tips to really ensure that people have success with this book?
Yeah, I would say room temperature ingredients is quite important. If you've ever tried to whip up cold butter, you'll just know that it doesn't happen. So room temperature ingredients, for sure butter. Eggs is somewhat less important, but the best is at room temperature. Don't overmix your batters. Flour gets tough the more you stir it. It gets more bready and tight. So the less you stir it, the better. I'm trying to think what else.
Those are great.
Just always just know your oven. And if it's make sure to watch your cookies as they bake, hopefully through the door, not by opening it up. And just see how they look and make sure they're not getting overbaked.
Yeah. Did you all use
chilling the dough?
Oh yeah.
Oh, chilling it. Yeah.
Most recipes, not every single one, but most recipes we chill the dough.
Yes. Yeah. And that helps both with flavor and texture, because when you chill the dough, the flour absorbs more moisture, sort of overnight, it hydrates more. So you get a better texture and a better chew. Sometimes a little more height on your cookies.
So it's like 2 hours, right?
Yeah, usually like 2 hours. You can do it overnight. That's the thing with cookie dough, is you can make the dough, put it in the fridge, and then make it a couple days later. A lot more flexible than, say, like cakes.
If anyone that's listening is thinking about like planning for holiday baking, some people make cookie boxes and want to do that. Do you have any tips for do any of these cookies? Do you think they would freeze okay, or should they make them fresh, store them in tins? Any tips about that?
Well, also we have those chocolate peanut butter balls that were, that from your aunt, inspired by your aunt. So his aunt had this recipe that was secret for all these years, and finally, she shared.
She did share it.
The ingredient, and actually, the reason why she didn't share it was because it had a funny ingredient.
It had some paraffin wax in the chocolate, so she didn't tell people.
We don't use that. We amended it, but that's a good gift one too, because. Just the way they store it.
Yeah, it stores really easily. But yeah, in terms of freezing and stuff, I generally recommend freezing the dough, not the finished cookies. Because you can, depending on the dough, I would say most doughs, you can freeze no problem if it's in a nice, tightly wrapped for a couple months even. And some doughs you can either freeze sort of whole and then let it defrost, or portion them out. Like if it's a slice and bake, slice it already and then freeze the little slices. That way, when you want to bake some cookies, you just take them out, put them on a tray, throw them in the oven.
I think the other thing too, I was going to say, another tip is when you take the cookies out of the oven, how we let them sit on the tray.
Let's sit them on the tray for several minutes.
5 minutes or so, and then you take them out and you put them on the cooling racks and let them cool completely before doing anything with them.
Yes, that'll give you the best texture.
Yeah. And are you parchment paper, greased cookie sheets, ungreased cookie sheets? What's your stance on that?
We like to use parchment paper. It cleans up so easily and nothing ever sticks.
For the bar cookies, it's nice. You could just lift out the bars from the parchment paper.
Exactly. You sort of make a sling and you can lift them out. It makes it cutting, brownies and things like that so much easier. I've had better luck with that. Sometimes when you grease pans, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I feel like parchment paper is pretty consistent.
Yeah. Yeah, well, those are wonderful tips. And I can't wait for everybody to get their hands on this book and do a lot of cookie baking this fall. And
Me too.
your new book that takes the cookie. And like you said, it is available for pre-order. Will be officially released on November 12th. So if anyone pre-orders it, I believe they usually ship it like around the day that it's released. So
yes,
get those pre-orders in, and it will then be at your house or apartment or wherever easily before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, preheat your ovens now. Get ready.
Yeah. Get everything ready. I mean, it is good to buy sometimes ingredients ahead of time. If you plan to do a lot of baking for the holidays, you could definitely get flour, sugar.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, if you're right before Thanksgiving and you go to buy a can of pumpkin at the store, sometimes they're run out.
Exactly. So now might be a good time to go ahead and get that. Of course, we're already in October. We'll have to see how the stock is.
Yes.
So one of the things I like to ask all of my guests as we're wrapping up here is if you have a favorite cookbook.
Yes. I will go first. If I had to pick just one for anybody, I would say The Joy of Cooking. My mom had the joy of cooking in our kitchen growing up, and we used it all the time. Everything from how do you make a hard-boiled egg to how do you make a fancy souffle, and everything in between. Any recipe is in there. I was given a copy when I graduated high school. I would say that one is like the Bible of the kitchen.
We use it all the time.
We use it all the time, even now.
I'm going to say another cookie book. I'm going to say actually the person that we were speaking about earlier, Rebecca Firth. She has a cookie book called The Cookie Book.
The Cookie Book, yeah.
And she's a close friend of ours. And it was actually funny because before we even started writing this book, when we knew we were asked to write a cookie book, we called her and said, "Hey, just wanted to let you know, I know you just had a cookie book come out a couple years ago, but we got asked to do one too." And she said, "Oh my God, it's going to be so different." And
it is completely
it's
different.
So different. It looks different. The photography, the colors,
the recipes,
everything. But it's a great book. Her recipes are so solid as well. And
the cookie book.
The photography is beautiful. That's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Very good. I will link to both of those in the show notes as well. Good for everybody to discover new books. I've loved that question. I've heard about some really different and unique cookbooks over the years, and it's always fun to hear what everybody has to say. So thank you so much for chiming in on that.
Of course.
So what's coming up in November for you guys with the book release?
Well, we hope to do some little touring based on the book. We did for our first book. We had a book signing event here in LA. We had a couple in New York. We did the Bay Area, Portland, Seattle.
Yeah.
So I think we might want to get this show on the road and make some cookies around the country.
In any of those areas, keep your eyes tuned for Ryan and Adam heading to your town to talk about cookies. And been so fun to have you on the show. I'd love for you to tell everybody how they can connect with you online.
Yeah, well, our website is husbandsthatcook.com, and you can find us on Instagram at husbandsthatcook. And we're on Facebook and stuff, but I'd say our biggest platform is Instagram, and just come visit us on our website. We have a whole archive of recipes for you to enjoy, and it's our place where we share stuff about our lives and our recipes and our families, and it's a great place.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Again, wish you nothing but the best with your new book that takes.
So sweet. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So
That's great.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. Again, all the links can be found in the show notes at www.cookbooklove.co. And if you are interested in writing a cookbook of your own, please check out the free cookbook writing masterclass called How to Get Paid to Write a Cookbook. It is designed specifically for food or nutrition experts, and you can check that out at www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/free. So that's it for today's episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green. And until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.